All right, well, for the past 5 months, Muammar Gaddafi's government has been fighting a war on several fronts against Libyan rebels operating out of 3 opposition-held enclaves and against an aerial bombing campaign led by the NATO military alliance. Even though the US, France and Britain are leading the drive to overthrow Gaddafi, his regime has allowed journalists from the US, France and Britain to report in Tripoli. As CNN's Ivan Watson reports, these journalists are under strict government control while operating out of the Rixos Hotel, the mandatory residence for most foreign journalists visiting Gaddafi-controlled Libya.
So this is how we pretty much get to see Libya outside of our hotel. On government-organized bus trips, all of the foreign press corps piled into here.
The bus trips are the only time we're allowed to film outside our hotel. Oftentimes, our government hosts don't tell us where we're going until the last minute. We see Libya through a keyhole. Our movements and interviews strictly controlled by Muammar Gaddafi's government. And yet, we can still gather clues that offer glimpses of the immense pressure placed on the regime that's ruled Libya for more than 40 years, as well as a society suffering the terrible consequences of war.
We've been brought to the frontline city of Zlitan, where this morning an airstrike hit a villa and killed 2 children and a woman. Their bodies are lying in this mosque, and a crowd has gathered grieving relatives and neighbors and friends, and it has given way to an angry denunciation of the NATO bombing campaign here. This is the first time during our assignment in Libya where we've seen an obvious case of the NATO airstrikes killing civilians.
The men at this funeral clearly weren't expecting a busload of journalists to show up. Cameraman Joe Duran tried to balance capturing the intense emotions of the moment while also attempting to show respect for the young victims and the family's loss. After the funeral, the government bus takes journalists to what officials say is a civilian target bombed by NATO. And here we get another glimpse of reality through the keyhole.
We're on the compound of a law school that was hit a couple of days ago, again by airstrikes. But there is compelling evidence that this has been a location for some military. These appear to be uniforms over here, these olive green pants. And then we've got boxes here that look an awful lot like they could have been holding ammunition.
Government minders told us the ammo boxes and uniforms belonged to law school security guards. But according to security analysts who examined the serial numbers, this box would have held Russian-made armor-piercing incendiary B-32 rounds for the kind of machine gun that's typically mounted on armored personnel carriers and anti-aircraft guns. Back in the hotel, it's hard to get a good night's sleep.
You can see smoke. It's 2 a.m. We just heard 4 loud, long explosions. We can hear warplanes overhead, and it looks like we're in for another night of airstrikes. There was a pretty intense night of airstrikes last night. Could you go check out and see the impact of those explosions?
In this war zone, all you can do is sit on the roof and watch the explosions. You're not allowed out. If you go out, you're going to get arrested and sent back to the hotel, or worse, deported.
That's not the view of the deputy foreign minister, who paints a much more rosy picture.
My personal understanding of this is to allow journalists to go freely around and to talk to anyone who are pro or against the regime.
Go. What you do here? Go.
Sounds good, but reality was different. In practice, it's difficult to dodge the government minders. We were successful sometimes, though.
This is the neighborhood of Souk al-Juma. It is one of the most restive regions of the Libyan capital. And when we were brought here, there were people closely monitoring what our team was doing, but I managed to slip away and hear some of these whispers of dissent at length from some of the residents here.
We want patient, just all people patient.
What are you waiting for?
Waiting from Musrata, the people he has kind
The rebels?
Rebels, yeah, sure. We're waiting him to come here to bomb all Tripoli.
You want them to come here?
Yeah, we want him to be free.
I guess for those who spent time here, it'll be remembered as a kind of surreal luxury prison, but a prison that has enabled us to get an insight into the conflict that others don't have. So it's not a complete waste of time.
We've just crossed the border from Libya into Tunisia, and I'm feeling a sense of relief, both because we're out of the war zone and also away from the culture of fear of Muammar Gaddafi's Libya. I first went there 3 years ago. Even in peacetime, I was always escorted everywhere by a minder, and Libyans were clearly afraid to speak out against their government, to even be quoted on record. During the 4 weeks we've been in the country, government officials have repeatedly accused me of being a criminal and a spy for NATO because they've been critical of some of the reporting that I've done. Despite that, we've met some very special people in Libya and are very worried about their future because there are no signs that this civil war will end anytime soon. From Joe Duran behind the camera and myself, back to you, Backstory from the Tunisian-Libyan border.